Welcome to Hidden Struggles. In this episode, we're continuing Crystalyn's story and talking about what it was like for her, as one of Jehovah's Witnesses, choosing to enter the field of massage therapy. This is where her decision to build a career she loved ended up creating situations she never saw coming.
When I decided that I wasn't fulfilled enough just pioneering and that's it, working just part-time jobs, always struggling financially. So eventually I said, I have to do something else. And I decided I was going to look for a vocational school to go to. And I had always been interested in massage therapy. So I said, well, I'm going to go to massage school. So I got off the pioneer list. And I said, when they asked me why, I said, well, I'm going to go to school. I'm going to go for to become a massage therapist. And at first, there wasn't much said about it. Only they were trying to encourage me to stay on the pioneer list. But then once they realized my mind was made up, the conversations turned to, well, are you going to be giving massages to men? Well, yeah. Well, do you think it would be appropriate to be be in a room alone with a man and giving him a massage? Some of these men will be married and have wives, and do you think that's appropriate? You know, and I said I compared it to being a nurse. I said, there are sisters who are nurses. They're alone in room with men and have to bathe them and do other things as part of nursing. I considered massage therapy as a therapy, as part of helping someone who having physical pain or something. I never even considered it as if it was something bad. And so that was some of the pushback that I got when I first told the elders that I was going to go to school. But the funny thing about that is, after I finished massage school, then people wanted me to give them free massages. So at first, they were like, don't go. And then after I went, they would say, one time the circuit overseer was having a pain in his neck or something. And one of the elders came to me and said, oh, the circuit overseer told me he was having pain in his neck. He thinks he might have laid wrong at night, slept wrong on it. Maybe you could give him a massage. And then I was like, well, wait a minute. When I told the elders that I was going to go to massage school, they told me you're going to be touching married men, But now all of a sudden, because the circuit overseer wanted a massage, it was okay.
Oh, that is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you give
And
him
they always wanted it
a
for free.
massage?
No, I said no.
Good for you.
I said no, and I tell you why I didn't say no. What I said was, this is how much I charge. And they said, you are going to charge the circuit overseer? And I said, how am I supposed to grow a business if I'm giving free massages to everyone? Because it wasn't just that. Other people in the Kingdom Hall, my mom hurt her leg. I twisted my back, and they all wanted me to give them massages either for free or give them like discounted services. Now, how am I supposed to build a business if I'm giving everyone free massages? So I said no. And when I was in massage school, in the business portion of massage school, they talk about that, about giving your services away for free, because then you are not able to build a practice, a business. And so I said, you know what? This is going to be the first time that I am going to stand my ground, and these are my prices, and I'm happy to give whoever wants a massage, but this is my rate. And people were offended. They were actually upset that I was not giving free massages to circuit overseer, to circuit overseer's wife, to the elders' wives, to other pioneers, to older ones. And I said, no, if you want to pay me, that's fine, but I won't be doing it for free.
At this point, when you went to massage therapy school, you still thought this was the truth, right?
No, actually, I was on my way out and I knew it. I think looking back now, I use going to massage school as an excuse to get off the pioneer list.
Okay.
So I couldn't just say, I don't want to pioneer anymore. But in my mind, I knew that I was trying to create an out for myself.
And, looking back on all that about trying to get off the pioneer list and everything, when you think about it, it's supposed to be a volunteer situation. You didn't just feel like you could just come off of it without having an excuse? I mean, how did you feel?
No, because I was single. And so people would say, you don't have an excuse. Remember, we would go to the assemblies, and it was always about being self-sacrifice. And when everybody's single, it should be pioneering or going to Bethel or finding ways to serve older people in the congregation. Like, there was just always these examples of, this is what you're supposed to do when you're single. And so I felt the pressure of that. What are people going to say? They're going to say, you just want worldly pursuits, or you're seeking money. And so you get looks and comments. And I saw other people who, over the years, who would get off the pioneer list for things that people didn't consider to be a good reason. And that's what they would say. You just want to make money. You are attaching yourself to this system of things. Don't you know the end is coming? And so I felt the pressure as a single person that you had to be active. You couldn't just opt out. You
Yeah.
couldn't just say, I'm done pioneering. I just don't want to do it anymore. You can't say that.
And I think it's probably like that in some congregations, worse than others.
It was tough. If, like you said, it did also depend on the congregation you were in. You're completely right about that, because if you're in a congregation where there's other single sisters your age, maybe there's 2 or 3 or more that are in their 30s and still single, then you all can, associate together. But I wasn't. I was in a congregation where everybody was married before they turned 30. Like, there was no one in my congregation that was over 30 and single, unless they were an older person who had lost their spouse.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes those were my friends, 60, 70-year-old sisters who had lost their husbands, and then they would be my friends. There was not a lot of options as far as other single people.
Just kind of like looking back in the rearview mirror, we don't realize just how bad it was. When you really think about it.
Yeah. Well, I had good friends when I was very young. I did have good friends I went to high school with that were Jehovah's Witnesses, and we all hung out together.
Mhm.
I had a good community, but what happened is that was when I lived in California. But then when I was in my early 20s, I moved with my family to Texas, where I knew no one.
Okay.
And so had I still been in California, I think I would have had a different experience, because the people that I grew up with that knew me as a teenager, I probably, even if they got married, they would have still been my friends,
I'm gonna tell you what, that moving, because we moved a lot. My father, then he was trying to get baptized, and he was working as a civilian on a military base, which is a no-no. So he ended up getting a job in another state. Or a lot of the brothers were losing their jobs because of the steel mill closing. And my dad was going there, and he had a job. And they're like, what are you doing coming here with a job? All these brothers here, they losing their jobs, and you coming here with a job, And they weren't really friendly. But it just goes to show that just because you're in a Jehovah's Witnesses doesn't mean it's going to be the same everywhere you go.
And I also try to explain that to people too, because things have changed so much over the years. For example, when I know there's a lot of talk about higher education among Jehovah's Witnesses. When I was in Texas in the 90s, if you were a brother and you were in college, you would not get appointed at all. You just would not get appointed. Now, that's not to say after you finished college and you weren't in college anymore, then, you could get appointed. But if you were currently in college, a friend of mine, her husband, when he was going to college, they would not appoint him as ministerial servant. But then I moved to the East Coast in Massachusetts, where education is very, like, there's a school on every corner. basically. Like if you want an education, there's a college for that in Massachusetts. So when I got to Massachusetts, I was shocked because several elders had college degrees. One of the pioneers in the English congregation, she was going to school to get her master's degree, and she was a pioneer. That was not how it was in Texas. I never knew a regular pioneer who was going to get higher education at a university. So it did depend on where you lived and what congregation you were in. So everybody's experience might have been a little bit different.
That's true.
And
That is so true.
and so oh yeah, it was a totally different experience, East Coast versus Texas. Like very different.
JT talks about that all the time, and how you could be in a congregation where you had wealthy brothers and they gave different advice. Like, I'll give you an example. We had a sister who worked for the federal government during Richard Nixon when he was going through the Watergate.
Wow.
And she worked for the White House, executive offices, and she told the brothers, she says, if something goes down, I don't think I should be working for the government. She said, because I don't think Jehovah's going to think much of me, and I don't think the friends of the congregation are going to think much. And mind you, she was not that far from retirement. So she said to the brother she was going to quit her job, blah, blah, blah. And the brother said, look, sister, how much time do you have on your job? And I think she was like 6 months out to retirement. And those brothers that were wealthy in that congregation told her, hang on to your job, get your benefits, go ahead and retire when you are supposed to retire so that you will have something in retirement. And so it just depends on, the brothers in the congregation. Now, so how many different congregations were you associated with?
I was quite a few, actually. I moved a little bit because, when you go to help congregations, sometimes they ask you go to this congregation or go to that congregation. So I had a couple of congregations in California and then a couple in Texas, and then I had lived on the East Coast. So I'd been in a few. And so I had an opportunity to see the differences, not just, even differences in language, being in foreign language and being immersed in other cultures. I've even seen those differences. And that was challenging for me because culturally, when I was in the Spanish congregation, a lot of the brothers, they didn't like to be talked back to or for me to stick up for myself. And that was a struggle for me for a while because since I wasn't married, the elders thought that they could just tell me what to do all the time. I had no husband, so they all felt like, well, we could just tell her what to do. So it started out little things like, for example, I was going to buy a new car.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Hidden Struggles, where Crystalyn shared her personal challenges around employment and what it was like trying to build a career as a massage therapist while living inside the Jehovah's Witness world. In our next episode, she continues her story and opens up about the situation she faced when she wanted to buy a new car, and how that moment exposed a whole different side of the congregation. From there, she'll take us deeper into the pressure around dress, grooming, and materialism, and how those expectations shaped her experience as a JW woman. So be sure to join us for the next episode as Crystalyn carries this story forward.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Hidden Struggles with your host, Lady C. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to stay connected with us. For more content, insights, and support, visit us online at hiddenstruggles.com.